Okay, I see we've got over 80 people already online and they're coming in fast and furious. Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to our next Breakfast with Relog. I see a couple of old friends online watching. Hi to you guys. I'm not going to greet each one of you personally. Hope you're all well with and not too affected with COVID and the third wave that's supposedly affecting South Africa. It's not too serious yet. Hope you're all keeping safe, and this has been a fun year, so to say, looking at the best of things, but the best that has come out of it is our Breakfast with Relog. We're almost a year down the line since the first one, and most of you are the same faces that join us, so know the process. Basically, if you can go to the chat area, and if you can, on the question and answer, put in some questions and we'll look at them and then try to answer them at the end of the session. We're not going to disturb them. Don't worry about raising hands and so on in the session. Basically, it's going to run, it's a different one. We actually, the 4 speakers today are all Relog speakers, and we're just going to discuss the fundamental topics that we use as Relog in our approach to distribution design. So it gives you a bit of a sense of the elements and the components that we address as consultants in developing supply chains, in developing distribution. I know that there's load shedding on at the moment. Our building is actually in a load shedding area, but luckily we have a generator. But if anything happens and there's a bit of a glitch, don't blame us, blame Eskom or the government. Okay, so we're trying our best. I hope you've all got your coffee and your croissant with you. I have mine right here. I hope you can see that. So I hope you'll enjoy that. And I think we're ready to start. We have over close to 100 people on board. I think there were about 150 registered, and people will join. So cheers to everyone and a good morning. Okay, let me start. I'm going to be hitting off the session and talking a little bit about strategy, site development, and sustainability. Okay, so we're going to talk about developing a supply chain. How important is the SDP or the site development plan? People don't know what the acronym is. And is sustainability critical? And ultimately ensuring you have a business case for what you develop. And that's key to us in developing anything that we develop, is that we look at the business case and understand what the end result is to the customer. Okay, it all starts with having a strategy. Without a goal, we're wasting our time. Any development of a DC, a warehouse, a DC or logistics process needs a strategy or intent. You need to have the goal of where you're going and how you get, and then the work that we do is how you're going to get there. Okay, and the last thing is your supply chain and logistics strategy needs to underpin your business strategy. You want to be the biggest retailer in a sector, you've got to say what supply chain or logistics strategy will underpin that. Should I outsource my stuff? Should I insource it? Should I centralize, decentralize? So those are all the questions that come up. So from a Relog perspective, we talk about it, strategy reimagined, supply chain and logistics planning. We look at the centers of market. We look at the cost to serve, your regionalization and centralization. What's your roadmap to development? What's first step? What's the second step? What's the long-term case? And looking at business case development and viabilities. And what are your strategic risks? And where does your competitors sit? What are your omni-channel options and concepts? Is there any new thinking that you need to be aware of? And look at your inventory strategic options. And that was an interesting thing with COVID. Made us very quickly look at our sourcing and our inventories, because a lot of people sat with a lot of problems in the beginning with the shipping challenges, etc. We look at the network analysis, the center of market, the site selection, national and regional DC strategies. Putting fast movers regionally and putting slow movers nationally. And a centralized distribution modeling, actually modeling what happens if you do one thing or another. And then you've got to tie that into your physical distribution. What's happening in the markets, where's your staff, what's happening with transport, and how you can get to it. You can't do this in a vacuum to what's happening in the real world. So that's part of the first steps of what we look at. And out of that strategy, we're looking at the sizing of what size facility you need, what sort of capacities you need, what throughputs, what growth, what are the objectives that you're trying to achieve, what are the criteria you're trying to achieve, what are the physical constraints, what will it cost you, what's the roadmap and your plan of action. And through that, you build a viability. Okay. And the next step is, once you've got this business case and viability, you then can start to look at developing a facility. And the first step of developing a facility starts with us finding the right site, centers of market, etc. And then we put a site development plan on it. Now, often the site development plan, people turn around and say, well, that's the architect's job, and we just should be looking at the internal operations. But the site development plan dictates how your operational work, okay? So we build DCs and supply chains to make a difference. And every aspect of that design is premised on optimizing process and cost. So if we lay out the site, we want to optimize the flow. We want to reduce truck travel. We want the sequence of flow to be correct. And then you tie that to your internal operations, optimizing productivity, store-friendly operation, picking based on rate of movement and effective loads, fast movers and slow movers. Not one size fits all. You've got to profile your design, and looking at maximum flexibility, maximizing capacity and growth potential. And then finally, we then start to look at the environmental considerations, your energy usage, your water usage, and your waste. So if we're looking at a building or campus, from the sizing models, you know what size footprint to put on the site. You then look at the external SDP and the internal design and the building specifications, the floor, the lighting, protection. Your equipment that goes inside, the equipment specification. The guys will talk a little bit today about software systems, warehouse management system. But it's not just moving boxes. It's never a one-size-fits-all approach. So you can't take one DC and copy it, and you've actually got to run this analysis for every single project that we're on, and run it uniquely, because the constraints, the criteria, and the objectives are very different between companies, and the site in itself may influence different aspects. The picture on the left is the project that we did for ShopRite, and you'll see that there's power lines down the middle of the site, and that was a critical thing that had to be adjusted in the SDP design, that the power lines didn't influence the layout of the site and cause it disadvantages. Okay, so the main aim of an SDP is to create a layout and use of the site that optimizes the operational flow. It starts at the gatehouses. One of the things that we're doing now is we're putting multiple fueling lanes at the entrance, which reduces your truck time and gives you better control. And in that saves you truck fleet and less trucks on the road, and you're getting better utilization out of your vehicles. The other thing is to make sure your flow is clockwise, so that all the trucks reverse into their bays on the driver's side. Unless any other guys over here in Europe, then try go anti-clockwise, because you drive on the wrong side of the road. Okay, optimizing flow. Looking at where you stop first, that you go to returns, then you go to workshops or wash bays, then parking or dispatch doors, so that the flow is there. And when you're looking at the supplier flow, first stop is receiving, and then possibly going to a return center for collection, making sure those flows work. The position of the building and the functions of the building. We've got battery bays, we've got returns, we've got refrigeration plants, we've got staff facilities. But if you can design a site in such a way that you can, for example, have a central battery bay and workshop, you can share equipment, you can reduce duplication. If you can link your return center into the DC, you don't have to load product back on trucks to get it between buildings. If you can put your refrigeration plant close to where you need waste heat, or close to where you need your refrigeration, you reduce your losses. So all of those are important in your site development planning to make sure that you're doing that. And then obviously your staff facilities, making sure you can share canteens and infrastructure. Okay. we need to optimize, the SDP is really about optimized transport integrated with it. We need fast turnaround times, effective movement of trucks, appropriate runouts and parking, making sure that the runouts are correct for the type of vehicles you've got. You've got to have ease of access. And you've got to have appropriate facilities. Your gatehouse, it's no use building a 100,000 square meter distribution center if you can only handle enough trucks that will run a 50,000 square meter distribution center. So a lot of what we do is around balance, making sure that all the elements that build up the distribution design are balanced. The gatehouse, the fueling, some companies using nitrogen gas filling, which have got to be in your process. So that's designed, your returns, your workshops, your washing, your dock interfaces, the on-grade and rear load docking is proportional to the balance of fleets that you expect to have in different areas. And you've got to be thinking about that throughout your design. If we move on to sustainability, one of the most important things in our life today, and one of the reasons the Relog colors are green, is that we focus significantly on sustainability, on a sustainable supply chain. You take it through the supply chain from raw materials to the customer, but we want to optimize the use of people, ensure high productivity, ensure our use of resources, power, electricity, energy, water, land usage are managed properly, and then we manage waste and recycling and so on. So how can we ensure green supply chains? Through the design and operation of the distribution infrastructure, the facilities, the equipment, the design and operations. Operational productive distribution center gives you a competitive edge, but is actually a green supply chain. So we're looking for the best ROI, but we're also looking for a green ROI. We're looking for lowest life cycle costs. And there's a perception there's no payback, but that's untrue. Today, productivity and efficiency equals optimization and equals a green supply chain. So to us, we've proven it's actually a very exciting area to be working in, is to make sure that we're dealing with sustainability. Okay, the traditional thinking about green was around the building, minimized use, land use, water management, grey water harvesting, putting solar panels, natural light, some LEDs, insulation, materials used in construction, smart glass, recycled steel, etc., and community considerations. But today we think about it differently. We also think about the materials handling equipment inside the facility, the batteries and chargers, the vehicles, how we use, the warehouse management system, how we handle waste, our unit handling, pallets, rolltainers, crates, which are reused. So we have returnable transit packaging. And then the control systems for the building and transport, all important in optimizing the process and getting an optimum productivity. For an example, we've just done a project with crate washing, and traditionally crate washing would use much water and heat. Just by switching to centrifugal drying, which is this picture of the left, that's reduced our our energy consumption for drying to about 10% of what it was. And not only that, we're able to recover a lot of water. And then on the right, by going to fine water filtration, we're able to recover the water, so much so that the water that we use is only clean water rinse. And just doing a project at the moment where the water that comes out the clean water rinse is what you're putting in on a continuous basis. So the spill-off from our crate washer feeds our truck wash, which means that we're using zero water in addition for the truck washers. Okay, and that just gives you a total water balance. And if you can use rainwater or recycled water for that, you're actually on zero potable water use. And South Africa is an arid country, so we need to be thinking about that in a lot of the ways. So when you develop the supply chain strategy and you develop the STP and you deal with sustainability, you've got to ensure you have a business case for whatever you're doing, guys. Very important. And so thank you. And I'm going to hand over to Floris. I think I need to click the right slide. So really, Floris is going to talk a little bit about the data analysis, the modeling and design. Thanks, guys, for listening.
Thanks, Gary, for giving me another 4 minutes.
Okay.
You were quite quick on your slides.
Okay. How do I stop share? There we go.
I'll just grab it from you.
Great, done.
Everybody seeing this new slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so my topic for discussion is where our process normally starts on data analysis and modeling and how that influences our design. Oops. And data is fast becoming your most valuable commodity in the business world. And as the ex-executive president of Hewlett-Packard said, the goal is to turn data into information and information into insight. There's a couple of different ways or methodologies to look at data or phases of evaluating information, data to turn that into information. And it basically starts off with understanding the problem statement. And this is our clients normally call us and tell us that they are short of space or they're not getting the volume throughput through their facility. And that's where you kick off and they'll tell you because they haven't got enough reserve capacity. So the descriptive problem statement is what they consider the why, what's going on. Why do I not have enough capacity? Is it a diagnostic stage? And then our role sometimes is to go and analyze that information and actually find out that they're running out of capacity because they are haven't slotted their facility correctly. Once you understand what your problem is, what your causes are, you're going to a forecast or predictive phase of analysis, which is trying to understand when am I likely to hit my next roadblock. And from there, we go into prescriptive solution finding to understand what do I need to do to change and avoid or plan for the next roadblock coming our way. And we use a couple of data sources throughout our analytical process. The easiest one normally to find is our throughput data, where we look at inbound and outbound information from customers. That's generally simple to extract, although our requirement is we need data on a transactional level. When I started working at ILS in the early 2000s, we used to ask for data on a monthly basis per SKU. Now we actually want data on a per day basis, and if we can get it a time-stamped information, so we can really dial down into what's happening in operation on an hour by hour, or sometimes within 15-minute segments. And that does put a lot of strain on companies to extract that level of information. The next obvious thing we look at is stock on hand. And sometimes we run into quite a few issues here. Very few customers actually keep accurate records of stock on hand over a 12-month period. Our requirement normally is at least to see it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Even on a per day basis is great. We also look at detailed location report information to understand which products was in which reserve location or pick face at which time, and how many of what SKU was sitting where in your facilities. The next big element that we normally have the most issues with is master data, especially the item master data. We find companies are relatively good at QB scanning their product, but pallet tie information is sometimes not maintained. And it's such a key element into really dialing into efficiencies within your facility, to understand what your reserve slot height needs to be to accommodate a specific range of goods. And that can really increase capacity. We've had a customer where just by changing beam levels around to suit his pallet profile, we're able to give him 10% additional reserve storage space in the same footprint, which gave him a couple of more years life where he was going to extend or build a new facility. Store master data is relatively good. Vendor master data is relatively good. XYZ location data sometimes not so good, depends on whether they're running, customers are running incentive schemes, which requires that to be maintained. Geolocation of stores we use to create center of market analysis. A lot of our customers don't record that, some do. And it's such a vital little piece of information if you're looking at transport optimization and facility location planning, to understand exactly where you're dropping it off. We've had customers give us geolocation information of the billing address of the customer, which is their head office, which has nothing to do with where the stock gets dropped off. Then we want to look at growth, which is the business strategy. What is the business likely to do over the next, and our planning horizon is roughly 10 to 15 years. And I know forecasting that long in advance is sometimes at best a guesstimate, but because the investment in facilities and operations is quite large, at minimum you want to take a stab at where you want to be in 10 to 15 years time. We've actually done STPs for customers over a 40-year horizon. So planning the nth degree of the development of the site, so nothing gets built that will hinder that development. So it's like for like growth. What is my existing stores going to grow? Am I going to take on new ranges? Am I going to open new stores? Am I changing my store format? We're currently engaging with a customer overseas. They are running hypermarkets, big 10, 15,000 square meter stores. They now want to go into neighborhood stores, small little convenience locations, which is completely changing the way they distribute and handle stock. And then, of course, new business. You know, am I taking on, as a pharmaceutical entity, sports, nutrition, or whatever? We spoke about time-stamped WMS transactional level data, where we actually look at each task the WMS issued and was completed by the operators, when it was done, each error message that was returned, why did it happen, where did it happen, to really dial down into the root cause of productivity issues. And then obviously truck movements, inbound, outbound. When am I getting trucks? I mean, you could get 400 trucks a day, but does that mean I'm getting 20 an hour, or do I get 100 an hour and then trickle feed the rest? That all plays into the capacity on your site development plan that you need to plan for, the amount of doors you need to plan for. If you haven't got enough doors to service these trucks, you have to find a place to park them. So all of that informs the design. The different types of analysis or models that we build. Obviously, we spoke about the center of market or center of gravity modeling, where we really look at the geolocations of your drop-off points, your frequency of travel. Where does your infrastructure have to be? If you're looking, evaluating two alternative or more alternative sites, which one will give you the least travel distance to your customers? And also, you know, you may be targeting a different market in a different segment, and will that dramatically increase your cost, or should I relocate my facility? Gary spoke about centralized and decentralized strategies. Which product range? Do I have to keep full product range at all my different facilities, or can I relocate parts of it and service facilities from a central location? Again, we've had a customer who've been able to extend the life of two facilities for 5 to 10 years now, by simply moving a portion of their range to a central facility and then cross-docking it through these two facilities. Service level obviously does have an impact on your operations in your DC. You know, am I traveling to the customer every day, or can I service him once a week? Or which do I need to service every day? Which do I need to service every week? That has an impact on what you're picking, the volume that you're moving out of your dispatch doors, the amount of trucks you use, etc., etc. Sizing of infrastructure, again, you know, depending on what type of operation you run, we use data to determine the footprint of our building at a very high level, assuming the basic operating methodology and stock holding planning. And that always then also informs the size of land that we need. Stock holding models, you know, what is the impact on my number of reserve locations that I need to keep, depending on how I handle singles or shrinks or full pallet loads, or and then our Pareto analysis, which again, fast movers, slow movers, you know, what do they quantify in terms of the effort that I spend on picking them? One can sometimes really get stuck into all the fast movers and the amount of stock that I'm moving, but the work is actually done on the tail end, where you have to go to locations multiple times for small little bits of orders. And we tend to forget about the rats and mice stuck in the corner, where a lot of productivity can get lost. Pick face design, it's vital that we understand and we develop pick face to the right capacity. The worst thing you can do is have too small a pick face and having to replenish that thing 10 times a day. you're likely to have lots of markouts. If you create multiple pick faces of this fast moving product, that sometimes also doesn't solve your issue, because pickers don't necessarily pick off one location. They'll pick off all 10 simultaneously, and all 10 will be simultaneously out of stock. And when you try and replenish them, you'll find too much stock in there to put the next pallet in. Storage densification, something we came across quite a bit in the last couple of years, looking at exactly what my stock holding profile is like. How much am I keeping of each individual SKU? Am I able to densify that into something like radio shuttle or live pallet to reduce my amount of floor space that I'm currently occupying? Can I push, by increasing some pick face sizes, can I push all my stock into pick face and then free up other locations? Building cube utilization, we spoke about profiling, exact profiling to your pallet height profile that you've got. Again, this often gets overlooked, and it's fundamental that companies look and maintain the tie high information on their pallets, and that tie high is enforced at receiving, so that we don't run into situations where pallets are now suddenly too large to fit into locations, or we're receiving multiple pallets where we could have received one and put it away and have one movement instead of two. Looking at machine capacity, how much of what machine type do I need? Again, it's informed by the type of operation that you run, and the densification of storage, and how do I, if I change the way that I pick, can I pick multiple orders? Can I pick across multiple stores at the same time? All of that influences your machine capacity. And then also your battery requirements, where previously, using the lead acid batteries, we sometimes just had a simple 2 or 3 times multiple for 24 operations. Lithium ion and new battery technology is completely changing that. And again, not all operations may need to run for 24 hours. So it's really trying to find and fine tune exactly our requirements without compromising on capacity when we really need it. I mean, one of the things in South Africa that's quite unique is our peak to average ratio. So you tend to be forced to buy and capacitize your operation for that peak, and then have spare capacity for most of the year. Personnel requirements, how much of what type of personnel do I need? How many pickers, how many reach truck drivers, how many supervising staff in each area? Again, informed by volume, pick planning, and design. Slotting plans, family grouping, DU fills, even selecting the type of dispatch unit that you're using. I mean, if I'm picking off a pallet, in order to pick a full pallet across all my stores, I probably have to pick across the full range of stock that I have. If I'm picking for small stores, if I can reduce the footprint of my DU, my dispatch unit, I can possibly create family groupings where I can enable my store to move that pallet or that picked order into a section of the store and really get rid of it and unpack it very quickly, instead of it being sorted out at the back of the receiving area. Various slotting strategies that you can look at, and also the quantification of how much dispatch units do I need, how many, if I'm going pallets or roll tanners or bins or whatever we're picking into, how many of those do I need? And then lastly, if we're considering automation or mechanization, what is the throughput that I need? And here it's vital to understand your peak to average ratios, because once you've set a capacity on these on conveyors or stacker cranes, or it's hard to just expand that capacity. The next level that's coming at us quite quickly is the ability to interlink devices and people and product into one holistic network, and be able to not just look at information historically, but to look at information being generated live. And the challenge here would be to filter out what is happening according to plan and only look at what is not happening according to plan, so that you don't get bombarded and caught up in the tsunami of information, but you're using the data that you're generating to really fine-tune your information, your effort level, and focus where you're doing what. This is one solution where you can use tags which is has no battery in it, but it actually gets powered over your Wi-Fi network. You can see it's accurate to 30 centimeters, got a 40-meter range, and that information you can do almost anything with once you have it. Understand where's traffic in my warehouse too high? Where am I creating congestion through my layout? Which pick faces are getting visited too often? Impact. For a long time now, we've had impact sensors on machines. We understand when something gets bumped. We understand the extent of the impact, but we don't know where. This will enable us to really pinpoint where it's happened, how often does it happen there, and then we can understand what to do about it. And this interconnectivity is fast becoming reality around even our environment. In terms of our process that we follow, one of the first things we try and do is we need to spend time in the operation. So data is a wonderful thing, but you easily get caught up into analysis paralysis. Unless you understand and have a feel for the operation, it's hard to find the niche information within the pile of data that's been thrown at you. So it's important that we spend time in the operation, we interview staff, we understand their challenges, because they live it every day. Their insight's valuable, and it's a good tool to use to really steer you in a direction. They can steer you the wrong direction, so you tread carefully. And then also we try and, through that process, evaluate different data sources. I mean, sometimes some of the management reports are very useful if you look at them a different way to finding the root cause of issues that they're having. The next step is obviously creating a database of information and validating that information, which is sometimes not as easy as it should be. Then we go into initial modeling stages where we're looking at forecast or growth models, trying to determine where is the business going to be over this 10 or 15-year horizon. What are we looking at our macro level, on inbound, on picking, on outbound, on storage, if we just continue as is. And then we try and build a baseline model to just simulate what's currently happening in the operation. That helps us just fine-tune some of the assumptions that we use in our modeling process to make sure that we can, on screen, simulate what's happening on the ground. Then we start playing what-if scenarios, and this can take considerable amount of time, depending on how much what-ifs you're doing, centralized, decentralized, testing various stockholding plans, looking at automation or mechanization, center of gravity, stock on hand strategies, etc., etc. Really trying to test the boundaries of what we can do with the business and where's the key trigger points of optimization within the operation. And then once you've settled on a operating methodology or a plan of strategy or a route, we go into the detailed modeling, which is looking now into every finite element, understanding how many doors we need, inbound, outbound, staging depths, pick face design, storage types, machine models, personnel requirements, what is our handling units and our dispatch units going to look like, etc., etc. So that, in a very, very brief nutshell, is what we can do with data at the present time. I hope that was informative, and I am just within time. So the next person, I think, is...
That'll be me, Floris.
Anton.
Thank you for entertaining us. Morning, everyone. My name is Anton Kutsia. I've been with the company for roughly 10 years now. So what I'd like to talk to you today about, I guess I should just share my screen, which I haven't done. Apologies. Should be this one. Great. So I think you should all be able to see my screen. So yeah, what I'd like to talk to you about today is a bit about picking, storage, infrastructure, and automation, and what to consider when we're designing our picking operations and what other infrastructure is required to support this. Gary's given us some good food for thought in terms of what's happening outside of a building and how we need to make that work with the inside of the building. And also Floris has touched a lot on the amount of work and effort that goes into providing a very good base in terms of designing our picking operations and fitting out the entire building on the inside to making sure that we've ticked all those boxes and that we are able to meet the operational requirements of the building. So, I mean, the heart of the building really is the whole picking operation. That's the stock that needs to go out to store, needs to go out to customers. And that's eventually the factor that determines whether you're meeting your requirements or not. And there's a whole lot of things to take into consideration in terms of picking and the different solutions that there are. So I'll try and cover this in 15 minutes. But the intention is just to give you a brief overview of some of the considerations that we are looking at in the picking operation and some of the infrastructure required to support this. So in terms of order fulfillment in the past decade, that has changed rapidly, especially with the onset of COVID. Due to the fact that we weren't able to get to stores, the stores had to be innovative and bring the stores to us. And this has given online shopping a significant boost. Think of the platforms like Checkers 6060, Woolies Dash, you've got Take-A-Lot, and many others that have popped up and become very convenient to order groceries and other goods from. So retailers had to be dynamic and offer multiple platforms to service their customers' different needs. And this is somewhat complicated order fulfillment and picking. And sellers had to adapt to these various channels. So it's very important to understand what happens at customer level so we can keep the end goal in mind of how to efficiently service these different needs. Looking at the picking inside our distribution center, this operation may account for as much as 50 to 60% of our DC's operational cost. So hence it's very important to keep our focus on this and stay as efficient as possible to keep those costs down. Things like missed picks and late picks may lead to out of stocks at stores, and this is a direct impact on your customers, and you can potentially lose a customer if you aren't able to fulfill their needs at the store. The key objectives when designing a picking operation is to maximize on productivity, reduce cycle times, and increase accuracy. This means maintaining and exceeding our target pick rates. Travel time for pickers can cause a major loss in productivity, so it's important to also think of travel paths and our picking paths to keep that to as short as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, customers are putting a great demand on same-day fulfillment, or 1 or 2 days, which means we need to keep our cycle times to a minimum, and it means adapting our picking operation a lot. And also systems play a massive role in terms of enhancing our picking operation, and Cobus will touch on this just after me. So how do we go about ensuring we implement the right picking infrastructure for our business? Picking methods varies greatly from industries. You've got clothing, you've got apparel, you've got FMCG. There's a lot of industries and they all differ a lot from one another. So it's important to understand that. And Floris has also explained to us about throughput numbers, and this forms the basis of design for the correct picking operation and the infrastructure. So we need to closely understand the items that are being handled. How many units are we moving? Is it a single item? Is it a big case? Is it heavy? Is it fragile? And how many do I need to pick at a time? All of that plays a significant role in the picking operation. And like with any business, there's a natural ABC curve. And in most operations, we will end up with a combination of picking methods, each unique to some extent of how to handle those A's, B's, and C's differently. So at the end of the day, our target is to handle the product as little as possible will help to keep our supply chain costs down. So as mentioned earlier, it's very important to be aware of the end customer fulfillment and how the picked goods end up in store. And one needs to look at this process holistically, ensure that the picking operations speaks to the last mile delivery. The last mile can be very costly if one does not get that right. So depending on the product being picked, there are various ways to get the goods to stores and our customers. So there are endless variations and options on picking methods, which we don't have time to go into too much detail, but the table that I've given you just gives you some idea of pick rates that can be achieved for different picking technologies. We're talking about man-up order picking, man in trolley, scanning voice, pick-to-tote orders, shuttles, Bombay sorters, A-frames, and we can go from as little as 50 cases or units per hour to up to 40,000 units per hour. So it's also important not to just simply say I want the max that I can get, because that solution might not suit your product profile and might not suit your operation. So there's a lot of analysis that need to go into this to understand that you implement the right solution and accordingly have the right labor requirements and everything to get that required throughput. Even if it means going for a more intensive labor type operation, you have to weigh this up against the capital investment that you're going to do outlay, and you need to get those financial returns at the end of the day to make your business profitable. So each of these operations or picking operations that we've mentioned here, which is not even the whole solutions that you can look at, but I'll just quickly go into a few slides after this just to give you an idea of pictures and what there is that we can look at and what we do look at in terms of implementation and what we've done in the past. So over here we can see conventional order picking to pallets. That's your conventional wide aisle type operation. We've also moved a lot of the retailers have moved on to roll containers and wheels, which make it a lot more efficient at the back of store and even the loading of the trucks. Less machines required to load. Also, just rolling the stuff in and out of the store reduces that whole replenishment to store. You don't have pallets in the middle of the aisle and that whole congestion walking whilst a merchandiser is busy replenishing a shelf, which can be quite frustrating when walking around in a store. Then you've got carton flow solutions and shelving solutions to try and densify your pick faces. Now, this is also not necessarily the answer to try and get as much pick faces as possible. Once again, you need to look at your product, type of product, and how it suits this type of operation. But with carton flow and shelving, you can increase your pick face density dramatically. And this usually we see being implemented in terms of multi-level picking towers or mezzanines. Then if we look at some of the, call it, or some of the other racking applications that we have implemented before for faster movers, which are generally low number of SKUs but a very high volume movers. We've implemented deep lane solutions like you can see in the pictures. We've got 3D pushback, 3D carts and rollers, which is a LIFO type installation. So if the product moves fast enough, the LIFO shouldn't have an effect. Then you've also got other solutions where we've got 6 deeps, 6 deep on the ground, for example, with rollers, and with shuttle above to help you replenish those pick faces and move that product as fast as it needs to go. These can also be combined with some other picking tunnels where we've had call it 3 deeps on the side with shuttle above it, creating a tunnel on the ground. So there's a lot of innovative solutions and densifying of the picking operation that we also look at there. Then for applications that are not so popular, but stuff that we have done is mobile racking. We've seen these in chilled environments and freezer environments where we've got which is expensive space to construct. You want to get as much pick faces and reserves as you can possibly fit in there, but also it needs to suit the speed of operation, and you need to be able to achieve the number of pick faces that you need in the system. So mobile is usually for a low SKU range or and an average volume per SKU. Then what we've also done, if you look at, as an example, just furniture storage is quite interesting, where you've got these cantilever type racks. What we've also done for one of our other clients is we moved them onto fernie boxes, which is basically a big cage on wheels to be able to put in sofas, big items, and just make the handling a lot easier to be able to wheel those items across the floor. And that was combined with we had a separate area of this fernie boxes and turret truck racking with a turret truck to remove these cages, and then also a separate block stack area for white goods. So once again, you get that combination of operations where you have a specific picking operation to suit whatever goods you are handling. And on the right of the picture, you can also see there a picture of a tow truck, and also a man-up order picker for smaller or single items where the guys pick up at height for V&A applications. So as I've said, we'll have different zones, will be more suited to different products, full case area and the small item picking zone. So the picture on the bottom right there, you can see where we had an entire full case picking area for your faster movers, and also the items that are more case picks. And we've got a separate what we call SIP, or small item picking area, which was a multi-tier mezzanine, where we pick from carton flow and have a denser pick face there, small items picked into totes, and that's let down on conveyors and spirals down to the doors to consolidate that with the main order. And these small item picking zones, to try and keep that separate, you're able to manage your decant process better. It offers you a bit more security, and also in terms of better weights management, if you consider the amount of cardboard and things that get opened up in order to pick those single items or shrinks. So this is typically what we looked at in terms of that small picking area. We had a picking trolley where we've got a stack of empty totes on the side to be able to replenish once you've picked that front tote full. That gets packed onto a dolly once it gets onto the floor, and that gets shipped to the store inside on wheels. Once again, making it very easy for your end customer, call it the store, to be able to replenish those shelves. So then we also start looking at taking that a step further and getting away from manual and repetitive processes, and bringing in some semi-automation systems to the small item picks, as an example, where you actually bring the picking tote to the picker, and it's basically called zone picking, where you've got separate zones and specialized zones where a picker picks in a certain area of his station, and he just picks to that toast and pass it onto the next zone in order to maximize on that cube throughput. And that's usually combined with pick to light systems or some form of smart picking. In terms of enhancing your picking operations even further, there's other systems. People used to pick on paper. Obviously, if you've got paper in your hands, you don't have your hands free, and you can't pick as fast and as efficient as you would like. So we've implemented different systems in terms of RF scanning. We've moved people onto voice, pick-to-light systems, and that's just increased the amount of, reduced the number of errors, and accuracy increased in order to fulfill orders accurately. In this specific example, you see, for example, a mini load crane. So as opposed to the previous picture that I've shown of the small item picking, where we had on the right hand side, you can see those the fingers, what we call the fingers, in terms of replenishing the carton flow pick faces on the mezzanine aisles. We were able to take away the footprint of all those reserves, and we have implemented a mini load system where goods are decanted into totes, and a mini load crane or ASRS crane is responsible for the replenishment of decanted totes to and from these pick faces. And that just helps to reduce the number of reach trucks required. It saves on footprint, and we've optimized that system a lot. And then also, if you go to the next step, is full automation and mechanization to get to your high performance, high accuracy. But as we know, in South Africa, our labor rates are very cheap. And with the move of e-commerce, people have started investigating this a lot more to see how can we make this feasible, how can we make this viable. And I think there's still a long road to walk in terms of making this work and building that business case. As I've said, in South Africa, we've got cheap labor, it's HR issues and cultural change. Just to move from a more manual system to an automated system requires a whole new change management and getting your team on board with that. and also the local costs and skills that you incur to make these systems viable. So just in terms of just a quick overview, we're talking about automated guided vehicles of moving things, and they've got sensors, and people move flawlessly in between these machines, and you've got no accidents. You're looking at the auto store, which is an extreme dense storage and picking system. Once again, it might not suit any operation. So once again, you have to make sure that whatever you implement actually works with your industry and your business. And then also some innovative shuttle systems where you've got a shuttle system which can physically vertically climb this rack and move inside the racks to replenish totes, which is quite interesting. So yeah, as I've said, there's a lot to dive into. There's a lot more to be able to talk about in terms of picking, but we invite you to come and have a chat with us. Let us understand your business and see how we can help in terms of optimizing your picking operations. So thanks for listening. If there are any questions, I'll try and answer them in the Q&A. I'll hand over to Kobus now, who will give us a bit of an overview on systems. Thanks, Kobus. Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Let me just quickly start sharing my screen here. It will be this one. All right, that's the correct one. All right. Thank you, Anton, for running over time. That really helps me that I don't need to keep everyone that busy. But yes, my colleagues have done a great job of laying the foundation for this last part of our webinar. Now, once you've gone through all the steps of building your business case, building your business strategy, and you've analyzed the volumes and you've selected your infrastructure and your equipment, the last hurdle that you need to overcome is what system do I put in place to manage all of this that I have selected. Now, when we talk about complexity, if you have a small store with a small product range, low staff count, a smallish customer base, it should be fairly easy for an experienced manager to manage that entire process with the setup of a good and proper Excel document. However, when it comes to scale and volume, and you increase the number of storage facilities that you have, and you have a wide range of product and a large customer base, it doesn't matter how experienced your warehouse manager or personnel are, there's just no way that they can manage all of that effectively and efficiently. So your system is always something that needs to support your operations and not hinder anything. It should unlock your efficiencies and not cause bottlenecks and delays. The potential efficiencies of your operations and equipment depends on an effective warehouse management system. So if we just quickly look at a macro view of the supply chain, you have everything from your raw material input and transportation, fabrication and production, more transport. And then we get to the portion where we specialize in, and this is looking at your facilities, your storage facilities, your transport, and to your stores. And all of that typically falls under the retailer's ERP. Now, under the ERP, there's a few different sections. Where we like to focus is on the DC, the warehouse or the depot, and the WMS system that operates these facilities. As you can see in this green block at the bottom, there are a multitude of subsystems under the WMS. And now a lot of these systems either rely on the WMS for instructions and the processing of tasks, or they feed back information back into the WMS in order for the WMS to instruct other systems to execute certain tasks. A very few of these systems can operate as a standalone system and really still add value to your operation. We just move on to the next one. So just quickly, what are the fundamentals of any good warehouse management system? Now, a good warehouse management system should be able to optimize resources, be it man, machine, floor space, any of that. It does that. It does it to, a well-set of WMS is able to handle demand fluctuations and in its stride, whilst maintaining a certain level of accuracy and traceability, giving your managers the valuable insights and ability to understand what's going on with volumes throughout the facility. As I mentioned earlier, with scale and volume comes complexity, and with complexity, sometimes accuracy goes out the door. So a good fundamental principle of a warehouse system is that it needs to maintain accuracy throughout the process. It needs to provide you with track and trace capabilities, so you can see on a near real-time basis where your stock is in your facility, and also allow you to go into historic information to understand how did stock move, where was the bottlenecks, where was the delays, and what can I do to make that better. Also, another thing, a WMS needs to be reliable, and it needs to be able to maintain a good master file. As Floris mentioned earlier, a good master file is the backbone of any good operation. Without that information, you are working on guesstimates. Moving on to the next one, how do you choose a WMS? Now, there are a multitude of lists and stuff available on the internet if you Google it. And everyone promises that after you've gone through this list and after you've done this checklist and all of that, you will have the perfect WMS. However, what these lists fail to take into account is a good and proper understanding of your business's current state, the current system that you have in place, the availability of resources in your business, the availability of skilled users in the country, time zones, company culture, environmental aspects, social responsibility, as Anton has mentioned, after-sales support, stock and customer insights. And again, as we've seen in the past, is just the integration to legacy systems. There are so many legacy systems in place at our customers, and as soon as you bring in a new WMS, it's always an issue to make sure that the integration is seamless. So when you do put in a new system, what is the key resources that you need to implement a successful system? First of all, you need a good project manager on the client side, someone with decision-making capacity and a comprehensive understanding of the business and supply chain strategies, someone with intimate knowledge of targeted volumes, of the business strategies, desired workflows, available personnel, and a background, especially this is important, with a background in supply chain and warehouse operations. Then you also need to involve your operational personnel, and this will be someone like your warehouse manager who has an internal understanding of the flow of stock, the resources available, specific requirements, specific constraints in the yard, through the docks, through the entire facility. Then also very key is an IT manager. Now, this is the person that we need to be able to connect with the system supplier on a technical level, someone that understands jargon, someone with an inherent knowledge of the existing legacy systems that requires integration and how all of those API endpoints needs to communicate. Then this is also another one, as super users from the client. These will be your users that will be part of the user acceptance testing. They need to have a comprehensive understanding of how the new system works, how the old system works, how do you train the operational users later on. And these users will also then later on become your first level of support when an operational user or a manager on the floor has an issue. And they will be the first person or group of people to go to before you reach out to your system supplier. And then just a shameless plug, a key resource for successful system implementation is the Relog team, a group of passionate and experienced individuals who together has more than 100 years of experience, a team that will act as an extension of your warehouse and IT team. We can translate operational requirements into system requirements and assist your project manager, your warehouse manager, your IT manager, your super users, along with the system integrator to help everything work together so that everyone understands the needs of the business. Now, just to wrap up, is the future of warehouse management systems. I mean, it is very exciting where we are going with the fourth industrial revolution, IoT, and machine learning and all of those things. But the integration between systems, as Floris mentioned earlier, it relies so much on the ability to share good, clean information on a reliable and efficient way. With IoT and machine learning, the ability of resources to communicate and share the learnings as they move throughout your facility. Anton spoke about the AGVs. All of those items, all of those AGVs need to communicate with each other so they understand where the different AGVs are on a near real-time basis, so that they can communicate to each other. This is the best path, there's a congestion, don't take this path, and stuff like that. And this integration between the different systems, be it your WMS, your battery management system, AGVs, your stock control, WCS, conveyors, mini loads, whatever, the need to share that information and the complexity involved, it just becomes more and more critical that you make sure that your integration is done properly. The future of warehouse systems and the connectivity to resources is very exciting, and it will either strengthen your supply chain, or it could cause that you fall behind your competitors if you implement it incorrectly. Key to a successful implementation of the best suited warehouse management system is partnering with the industry leader, someone who understands the criticality of integration between your systems, and someone who understands your business and understands what equipment and infrastructure you need to implement to support your business case. And that is it from my side. Thank you for listening. If there are any questions, I will also take those questions in the Q&A, or after this, I'm sure Gary will open the panel for discussion.
Thanks, Corvus. Share this. Am I sharing the right screen as a background?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, guys. I've really got a great team behind me, and the objective today was to, as Relog, share a little bit about our approach, and I think we touched on a couple of things. Obviously, we didn't want to give you too many answers, otherwise we're going to teach you all the answers and then you don't come back to us as consultants. So it is a bit of marketing for us, unashamedly. But you can actually see there's a lot of depth to what we do and how important it is. A couple of questions that came up in the answer. Johan Lowe, your view on skills from a tech teaching and learning perspective needed to attract people to the type of work you're doing, thinking about succession in key positions. Obviously, we focus on that, and I think Floris can add a little bit to that. We're also trying to build some software that will allow us to be more sustainable in what we're doing, to add an SaaS solution to the market, software as a service to the market, to be able to actually run analytics on behalf of customers. The other question from Johan is a generic exploratory data analysis process fits well. Well, thank you. That's a compliment, I assume. We spend a lot of time on that. Johan, you're obviously an academic in the questions that you've seen, and then some of the guys, people are quite shy. There's not a lot of questions, and there's another set of questions that were answered already. Floris has responded to Johan there in the chat, in the question and answer. I don't know if Floris, do you want to go through them verbally so everyone else can actually share them? And then, and Carl asked a couple of questions. Thanks, Carl. You've got exposure to us on an ongoing basis as a client, so that's okay. Floris, do you want to run into some of these questions and just summarize the answers for people?
Yeah, so Johan also asked about self-help tools, analysis tools on supply chain strategy and site development. We are aware of them on the market. There are one or two actually being developed locally. The problem is they're quite sometimes very generic. And the analogy I used is trying to Google your symptoms for a diagnosis. It's dangerous to sometimes. If it's a simple problem, then a simple solution will do. But if it's a more complex issue, I think it also sometimes hides the methodology behind how they calculate your answers, and the results could be misleading without understanding the full picture. I mean, it's not about plugging in your sales data and getting an answer. You really got to understand where the business is going, what the product is like. I mean, moving 100,000 units of baked beans versus 100,000 units of SIM cards is a completely different process, and that's sometimes not able to do in these online tools. But it
other
can
thing
at least guide,
that
give you an
first,
indication.
just
Yep.
to add to that, is the human element, our experience, the years of experience of our team, and be able to discuss it across a team is lost often in a tool. And a tool works on simple algorithm, gets an answer and comes out with it. You find the nuances of reality are not managed in a tool. And that's I suppose that's one of the reasons one has consultants. If you could automate what we do and develop it into processes, we'd become redundant.
Yeah, but that's why I mentioned earlier, a lot of these systems, they fail to take into account the South African elements and your business nuances, your company culture, your current state, how your business decides to do things, just your managers in place, who makes the decisions, what do they like, what's the company feel. These systems don't take that into account, and that's where we need to spend the time in the business and understand what's going on before we actually pump out any answers.
Johan also asked us about customer profiling and inventory profiling. So we don't specialize in inventory optimization. I mean, there's a lot of customers and a lot of consultants and software out there that can do that for you. What we do, however, do is plug in the inventory plan into our models and show customers what the result would be. And sometimes that does generate a review of their inventory profile plan. And we're also, able to guide them, to steer them to, I think you're going a little lean, or you're going a little rich in stock. But it very much depends on economic order quantities. So, I mean, we have customers with very large days cover, but for them, it's about lowest price, ordering the most amount of stock and getting it into that facility at the lowest possible cost. So they're happy to carry additional inventory. Customer profiling, definitely, we have to go into that. We have to understand, large, small, medium customers, regular ordering customers, once a month ordering customers, because all of that has an influence on the way that we pick and the DUs that we use and the amount of transport planning that we need to do.
But more than that, Floris, we also look through that to the end customer. So we also profile LSM, grouping, range, expectations, because there are different aspects to that.
Gary, I think there's a couple of live questions we can also go to. Loki is asking.
The questions are now coming up fast and furious.
Quality of wood pallets having a negative impact on the warehouse productivity. It does happen. I mean, certainly if you're trying to use mechanization and automation, you need a good quality wood, good quality pallet. But thus far, I think the alternative plastic pallet hasn't really gotten into the mainstream in terms of the large retail customers. But it does have a place. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Gary.
I think, look, the wooden pallets quality has improved over the years in the country, and it's quite professional and depends. If you're buying from a good supplier, you tend to get it. The biggest problem with wooden pallets are single-use pallets in circulation, cheap imports that have come in on pallets and people then recirculate them. Those are a problem. The other problem is people buying bad spec pallets from cheap suppliers. Okay, and so that does be a problem. Obviously, Loki, your question is a little loaded. You're trying to see if the market's good there for plastic pallets. There is a purpose and a place for plastic pallets, as well as steel pallets. So in different production areas and so on and so forth. And it's all related to use, cost, etc. We're not seeing a big move anywhere in the world to operations totally on different pallets than from wood. Wood is still the common basis in terms of pallets. The only time you'll see steel or aluminium or plastic pallets is largely in controlled environments where contamination from a health point of view due to wood and ability to wash and sterilize becomes critical. Other than that, we're still seeing wood as the predominant solution throughout the supply chain, whether it's with automation or with manual facilities.
Yeah, an easy answer to poor quality wood pellets in automation is just to have a pellet pool and a slave pellet where you put the bad pellet on top of the good pellet. It does cost you some capacity, but it is a relatively simple add-on. I see.
There's a question from Peter Else.
Yeah.
A lot of companies only use SAP for WMS. Would you go for SAP or an integrated WMS? It's a difficult question, Peter. I think there's horses for courses. If you're a big company and you have a very integrated ERP through your SAP, the first point of response would be to try and use a SAP, an integrated part of SAP, the SAP EWM as the WMS, because your integration's there. If the SAP EWM doesn't give you the processes and the optimization that your particular business needs, you then may be better off going for an off-the-shelf WMS or another WMS and integrating it back into your ERP. So it's really something one has to analyze. One has to look at the pros and cons, the costs, the integration, the customization, and then decide which way you're going to get the best results. Also depends on what you've got in terms of automation, warehouse control systems, and other aspects and how they integrate and influence on SAP. Kobus, have you got any further thing to add on that?
Yeah, no, so I mean, exactly as you said, it depends on what the SAP ERP and WMS is able to provide you and the turnaround time of that integrated WMS. If you can't find that, and if the timelines doesn't suit your needs, it is better to then go look elsewhere for something that you can integrate with your ERP system.
And also what you can afford. SAP tends to be the pricey solution.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that, but
it may actually end up being cheaper by the time you add all the customization and the interfaces on an off-the-shelf solution. So one has to evaluate what the potential is.
Yeah.
The difficulty with any WMS and any system integration, to a large degree, it's a black box, and you only know what you've got once you're actually using it and once you've gone down the line of integrating and developing. So it's actually it's quite a difficult thing to actually make a statement on upfront.
And the quality of the integration team. I mean, SAP is extremely functionality rich, which is great, and also a negative because it depends on how you set it up as to what results you're going to get out of it. So you got to be careful about who you pick to actually put it in and set it up for you. Loki's asked about warehouse operators changing to fully automated forklifts. I think Gary would be a nice question for you.
Yeah, so there's definitely a move to having AGVs as forklifts, reach trucks, pallet movers, all moving on automation. It's similar to what's going to happen on our roads. At some point in time, the cars will go automated. It's a lot easier to automate the process in the warehouse. We have no taxis running down our aisles, hopefully. So the predictability of process and operation is coming. I would guess in the next 2 to 3 years, you will start to see South African warehouses with certain amounts of long travel operations and reach trucks going automated. It's a very different automation from the old automation, which were very hard automation with conveyors and automated cranes and a totally automated process, which was very less flexible. So this is more of a hybrid solution where you'll mix manual and automation. And I think that is going to happen quite quickly into our operations. Lance has got a question. We've seen over the last year or so that we have realized that this status quo in the facility may need to change its personality from overnight, from being a normal DC to an e-commerce mindset, for example. When planning a new facility, do you offer some thought on the possibility of change, for quick change? Further to this, is there a percentage of growth factor you plan for, hardware and software systems growth as an add-on, plug-in or play when needed? Okay, it's quite a mouthful, that question. Okay, so the first thing is business for e-commerce and business from day to day is quite different in that your number of customers and the number of units per order drop, the units per order drop and the customers increase. And that has a totally different profile on what your business does. Also, there's packaging consideration. So it's quite difficult to switch over, and it needs quite a lot of re-engineering. Some facilities are totally unsuitable to be re-engineered. Some facilities easy. When planning for new, do you allow some possibilities of change? We try to allow certain amounts of flexibility and growth, and you sit with your customer and you predict where your business will go, a high load, low road, what are the potential opportunity changing. But to be quite honest, one doesn't have a crystal ball, so the customer themselves don't know where they're going. So we can map out 5 years, sign it off with a customer. We all think that's a great bound on where the business will go. And 2 years down the line, they've bought another company, or they've branched into another business, or they've taken on other products, and we come back and we have to rethink quite quickly. Is there a growth factor you plan for? The growth factors are really related to population growth, economic growth of that business, their potential targeted growth, and each business will have a different dynamic that we will actually sit with the customer and work out what growth we actually plan for. I mean, we sat with certain startups that sort of double within 6 months. How do you plan for that? So if you multiply that business doubling every 6 months over a 4-year period, it's getting to a totally different thing. So it becomes very difficult to plan on those, and you get very short horizon growth with a lot of the new startups and e-commerce business. Hardware and software seem to grow as an add-on and plug and play when needed. I think hardware and software is really related to what your business needs. You've got to think about it each time that you're doing a change. And the software is developing at such a rate at the moment that you may come back and what was right today in a month's time may be the wrong answer.
At the same time, I think, Gary, the e-commerce is also giving us opportunities where certain customers, they would have liked to service their stores on a singles item basis, but it does add a heck of a lot of requirements on your team, increasing the amount of picks that you do, et cetera, with the ability to perhaps service your e-com customers as well as your stores with singles provides an opportunity to actually mechanize or automate some of that process and then give you a payback you would never have had without the e-commerce business. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword sometimes.
Yeah. Look, and each business is different, and sometimes you can actually gain benefits from developing a singles pick solution for e-commerce, which then increases your serviceability to your own stores and offsets it. Everything's also an economy of scale. So as you can build scale, you can start to do things intelligently and economically. I see another question here, James Waits. Do you find that most of your work is on brand new greenfield DC design or redesign within existing operations? And from your experience, which is more challenging? We get, I would say we get about a 50-50 on that. I would actually say brown builds are actually more challenging than greenfields. Greenfields give you an ability to actually have less constraints. Design is an iterative process. You start with an objective, you lay out all the criteria and objectives you want to achieve, and then you put down all the constraints that you've got to work within. On a greenfield, you can actually limit the constraints so you can optimize much quicker. On a brown build, you've actually got much more physical constraints, and you've got to therefore think a lot out of the box to be able to come up with solutions that make a brown build better. Okay. Floris, here's a nice one from Carl. Do you want to answer that?
What other solutions or designs are there to optimize inbound pallet intake, offload, travel, offload, Budweiser use rolltainers and inbound lanes? We've seen and tried to develop viabilities for truck bodies and trailer beds, which actually runs powered rollers that actually just shift an entire lane or load onto a roller platform in the warehouse in the same way to load vehicles. It's expensive, and with a double pallet forklift, you know, we have customers offloading in 36 pallets in 9 minutes. It's hard to beat that compared to building a customized platform on your beds. And interlinks are very difficult to offload a full load at once. So if it's a simple trailer, it can be done. And then obviously you're sitting with a mechanized solution on your floor, which then is dedicated to only servicing a mechanized truck bed.
So Carl, what you'll often see is these type of conveyor, there's different conveyors. So automated transport loading, you'll see when there's a production plant and a dedicated warehouse that runs between that truck shuttles. So it's almost like an extension of the production plant, but just off site. So if you go to Britvic in the UK, their factory loads automatically, it comes to their DC, it unloads automatically, and then from that loading, their customer vehicles are conventional loading. But you'll often see conveyors on your receiving area where you've got on-grade loading, offloading, but you don't have an on-grade facility. So what you'll do is you'll put conveyors on top of your dock levelers so that you can drop the pallets on it. Now, some people just put pallets down on the dock leveler, but if the guy inside hasn't taken the pallet away, the guy outside sits and waits. So by putting a short length of conveyor, you give that ability that the pallet rolls away from the door, so the guy outside is disconnected from the guy inside and allows them both to work at their optimum productivity. So one has to look at what you need for different things. But in your business, I suppose, if you can optimize that, you touch the product as few times as possible, unload efficiently, and just put it down, take it away. I mean, probably the ideal would be able to have the reach truck running out, grabbing it off the truck and putting it straight into racking. But I think that's a little impractical.
We have customers who's been working on trying to achieve that, where the actual put away label is already on the pallet when it arrives at the DC. It's not operational yet, but that's the panacea they're aiming for. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I see quite a few from Johan Lowe. Again, Johan.
Integrative approach to packaging, warehouse inventory. So a lot of our customers have been asking and looking for their suppliers to reduce pack sizes, which is then a methodology for them to service the smaller stores. It becomes a real issue if you're looking at the forecourt stores and the small little market stores, which if you send it 6 packs of Revlon hair color would be their stock holding for the whole year, if they ever sell that product, one of in a year. So we've actually developed solutions for customers in their operation where they would strip out all the packaging and create their own unique packaging, taking 6s down to 3s or 2s. And then for another customer, we've developed a complete singles pick operation, because their typical store format is very small stores carrying huge range, 25,000 SKUs plus, and they can't afford to send these stores shrinks. But
packaging,
then again,
probably a topic for another webinar. I mean, there's so much in it in terms of reuse, recycling, environmental packaging, optimum pack sizes, etc. I mean, a lot of what people do in packaging is incorrect. It's done for marketing, it's done for economic production, people trying to get scale and as few touches as possible on their side. But what happens down the line becomes an expensive solution on the retail at the end of the supply chain. So one doesn't have an integrated, optimized packaging approach. In terms of recycling, shelf-ready packaging, reusable packaging, all of that's got to be discussed. So that's a nice topic for a webinar.
Okay.
I think we're sort of running out of time and getting to a close. Guys, feel free to contact Relog. Here's a nice one. Zubir Solomon, are any of your clients using blockchain functionality? Yes. We're busy running a project with one of our clients in Kenya, where they are actually getting into the growing process of supplying their fruit and veg and using quite a lot of high technology in their service and their supply chain, and building a whole back end using blockchain functionality. But I can't disclose more than that. And guys, so feel free to contact Relog. We'll let you know when the next Breakfast with Relog webinar is. Obviously, blind sending out invitations are going to change under POPI Act and so on. So we may have a different approach. You need to all let us know that you're happy for us to send you information on our webinars or something. We're going through this week, the POPI Act. It may even do a webinar on the POPI Act. I don't know. Guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for giving us the time, and we look forward to seeing you shortly.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Cheers. Bye-bye.